Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you once again to share with you our weekly Sunday school lesson. Today, our writer has selected as a topic Israel demands a king. It transitions from last week's lesson as we were in the book of First Samuel. We talked about Samuel's leadership, and now in our lesson today, we see that Samuel has aged, and so the lesson text has been extracted from First Samuel, the 8th chapter, the first through the 11th verse. It picks up at the 18th verse through the 20th. There is some suggested reading. I did provide you the reading last week, so I'm hoping and praying and trust that you have read the lesson. It's an excellent lesson. It has so many things to offer us to learn as believers. And so the golden text I'll read for you. It is 1 Samuel 8 and 7. The Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. And so, real briefly, the introduction of our lesson is very interesting. It reads, the people had noticed that the nations around them had kings to lead them. And they started to want that for themselves. Why couldn't they be like everyone else? The fires of revival had seemingly been extinguished as the people were no longer satisfied with having God as their king. And so that's the first key thing I want you to pay attention to in our lesson. So let's jump into our lesson. Samuel, we're at a point in our lesson where he is aging. He married, had kids. He had two sons that were adults. And so he appointed his two sons to be judges, not in his territory, but he had appointed them a little south of his territory. But they were not like Samuel in that he was an honest and a just man. His sons were reprehensible. They took bribes. They were not impeding justice fairly. And the people were growing tired of it. And they were afraid, as Samuel was aging, that these two sons would rule, and that's what they would have. And they would have corruption when Samuel leave. And so they, unbeknownst to Samuel, the Israel leaders got together and met and decided, we want a king. We want a king like everyone else. Why can't we have a king? He will take us into battle. He will lead us. And so once they decided unanimously, they met with Samuel. And when they met with Samuel, he was heartbroken, and he thought that it was an evil deed that they had done, rejecting his leadership, not thinking that they were rejecting the Lord's leadership. And so that's our first outline, is the reprehensive judges. His sons were doing evil. And so now the children, the leaders of Israel were now requesting a king like the other nations. And so that, as we transition into our second outline. And so we're going to give Samuel a lot of credit here, because when Samuel heard the request from the leaders, from Israel leaders, he went into prayer. I pause right here, and this is exactly what we should do when we are confronted with decisions that we have to make, that we are uncomfortable with. In fact, all decisions, the scriptures say, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct thy path. And so Samuel goes to the Lord, and he shares with the Lord what the requests from the leaders were. And as we know that Samuel is a prophet, and a prophet hears from the Lord and then shares the word with the people. The Lord lets Samuel know that it's okay. It's not me. It's not you that they're rejecting. Don't take it personal. It's me. In fact, ever since I delivered them from Egypt, they have been ungrateful. I've protected them. I provided for them. I fought for them. I delivered them. And constantly and repeatedly, they turned their back on me. And now they're saying they want to be like other nations. I've given them liberty. I've given them freedom, so that a king would not lord over them. But this is what they want. And so the Lord is saying, give them what they want. However, please let them know what it will be like when they get a king. And when they get a king and they're unhappy, when they cry out to me, I will not hear them. And so Samuel schedules a meeting with the leaders, and he explains to them that the request that you're making, please recognize the request that you're making, because if you select a king, or if we pick a king, this is what's going to happen. He's going to take your young men. He's going to make servants out of them. He's going to make them soldiers. They're going to have to make weapons. They're going to have to work in his fields. And the women are not going to be exempt as well. They're going to have to work in his kitchen. They're going to have to clean his houses. They're going to have to be maidens. And so all of these things Samuel was trying to get them to consider. He also shared with them, you've never been taxed before. You never had taxation. He's going to tax you. He's going to take some of your land. He's going to take your animals, and he's going to take the things that you take pride in for himself. And so after Samuel gave them the picture of what it would be like to have a king, they said, we want a king. We want to be like everyone else. And so the people refused. And Samuel said, the Lord will not hear you in the day. So if you take a king, he's not going to hear you when it gets bad and when it gets tough. You know, we have to, I'll pause right here and remind you, we have to be careful what we ask the Lord for. I like how the writer of this lesson gives us an example. The writer says the children of Israel were like children who want a puppy. All they see is the fun in the puppy, the small, precious puppy. But the puppy has to eat. The puppy has to be trained. He poops. He grows up. He has to be walked. And so you've got all these responsibility when it comes to having a puppy. You know, and I thought about when I was reading this, my sons, I have two sons, and we had a small dog, and now we have a bigger dog, and so I always would say, okay, I could deal with a small dog, small poop, big dog, big poop, and I didn't want to deal with the bigger poop. And so you have to consider the responsibilities around what you request for. And I also thought that this lesson caused me to reflect on some of the things that I've asked the Lord for or asking the Lord for. And so I had to go back and say, Lord, I know I've asked you for some things, but not my will, your will. Do what's best for me. Because I don't want to ask the Lord for something and then later regret it. Has that ever happened to you? Where you've asked the Lord and you begged and you begged and you begged, and when you got it, you was disappointed, you were hurt, you regretted it? And so it's important that we are careful and cautious about what we ask the Lord for, that we give it to him. He is all knowing. He created us. He knows all about us. He knows our destiny. And so we need to be cautious about what we ask for. And so the children of Israel were blindly just going into what they wanted. They saw the Joneses, what everybody else had around them, and they wanted the same thing. And so this lesson is saying to us, we must embrace being different. God wanted the children of Israel to be different. He didn't want them to be like the other nations, because he fully knew what they had to deal with in dealing with a king. One individual who reigned and made all of the rules for everyone. who was limited in his knowledge, limited in his thinking. But they had God who was all knowledge and all loving and all caring. But then they wanted to be like the neighbors. And so, in copying the nations around them was just going to lead them into a deeper sin. It was not going to help them. And so the writer of the lesson goes on to say, sadly, there are many believers who are indistinguishable from unbelievers regarding their moral viewpoints. And so we have to, as believers, we have to embrace our difference. We have to become comfortable with being different. The church should be different from the world. We have to make, we're not designed to make the world comfortable. We're designed to make the world uncomfortable. If the world is comfortable, they will not repent from their sins. So we are the church. We are there to love, of course, but to tell the truth and to show people that when they're sin. I'm trying to just really kind of walk softly on that, but I just really need to just say it. When people are sin, we need to tell them that sin and what the repercussions are from sin, and making them uncomfortable so that they will repent. And so the church must be in the world, but the world must never be in the church. And so we're going to go real quickly to the aim of the lesson real quick. The fact of our lesson today, as we've talked about Samuel and how he's aging and his son and the children of Israel wanting a king and the consequences, let's look at what the aim of the lesson is, and that is to realize that it is natural but dangerous to try to fit in with the world. The principle of our lesson is to learn that our desires as Christians should be to follow Jesus and not those around us. We must embrace our differences. We must embrace who God made us and how he made us. There is purpose in us being different. And everyone has a different journey. They have a different destiny. They have different talents, but it's all for the cause of the kingdom. And so embrace your differences. And the application is just that, to embrace God's call to be different from the world and to shine like lights for him. He has blessed each of us and given each of us talents and skills and desires. And he has a destiny for each of us. And all of this journey comes together in a puzzle to build the kingdom and to bring others in, to build that relationship, because we were designed to have a relationship with the Lord. And we want everyone to have that relationship with the Lord before it's everlasting too late. And so that sums up our lesson today. Our next week lesson, the children of Israel request a king. And so the lesson is Saul anointed king. Saul is the first king, the first monarchy for the children of Israel. I do hope you enjoyed our lesson today. Please invite others to listen and to join us. If you can find me also on YouTube, just my name, Latanya Milliken, Latanya Millican. Please share. Next week we're in 1 Samuel, the 9th chapter, the 25th. You know what? Just read the 9th chapter of the 1 Samuel, the 9th chapter, and you'll be prepared for our lesson. I love you. God bless you. Pray for the world today. God bless you. Bye.